Hey everybody, Evan here. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the show. We're Quarantech episode 7. And today I am really excited because I've got my good friend Chris Brandt, who I've been working with for about, 10 years, something like that. He's been at HMC for about 15 years. He is the creative director and he is all things visual communication. So he handles renderings, real-time, interactive, immersive, VR, AR, video, audio, streaming, website, like everything visual communication that comes out of HMC. We've worked together for a long time on projects. When I was designing projects and he was doing visualization, he would always take what we would give him and make it look amazing. And he's just taken off from there. So I can't wait to see what he has to show us on the episode today. So let's jump right into it. All right, Chris Brandt, welcome to the show. Could you just tell everybody who you are, what your role is at HMC, so that if they're for some reason not aware of that information, they'll get it right now.
Thanks, Evan. Great to be part of this. My name is Chris Brandt. I'm the creative director at HMC Architects. I've been with HMC for 15 years. I cannot even believe how fast that has gone. As creative director, I have my hands in a variety of things that are sort of creative and technical. So for me, that means visualization, VR, augmented reality, and into things like photography and video. And then I work with our art director on projects that sort of surround the brand, right? So the website, right, is something that we definitely put a lot of energy into and sort of imagining and rethinking like how we're going to do that. So I have this great opportunity to be part of a lot of different things, and I love what I get to do every day.
And for the most part, it's all things visual, right? I mean, it's and beyond visual, it's interactive, it's highly immersive visual kind of stuff now.
Definitely. So, I mean, I'm a nerd at heart, so that's where the sort of the tech part like weaves into this.
Okay, wait, let's stop you right there. We're going to the segment back in the day. All right. So, back in the day, Chris Brandt, tell us about your early days of computing experience, maybe the very earliest day of computing experience.
So early days computer for me, my first computer is this Packard Bell, right? It was 8 megahertz. It had a turbo button that would take it to 12. So that's
150%. That's huge.
Yeah, 150%. And oddly enough, it sounds so ridiculous now, but not every application could run that fast. So that's why it was an optional button.
Wow.
It would break certain things. It would make games like go too fast.
This is a total marketing image that you're showing, by the way, right? Because it's got 3D graphics on the screen. They're in color. This is like what only anybody could ever aspire to do a decade out even. Like this wasn't even attainable with your hands when you turn that thing on. It was a monochrome screen probably that you had and not a color. I don't know, like my first computers were monochrome.
So this one was color, but it was I think it was 256 colors.
Maybe, yeah.
It had a 30 megabyte hard drive. I do remember that specifically. I mean, it's a calculator nowadays has way more power than this computer did back then.
Right.
So yeah, that was my first computer. Shortly after that first computer actually is when I got into 3D. So my second computer, and I brought a prop just to prove it.
Yes.
So 3D Studio Release 4 was a DOS application, and I even have I still have a floppy disk from
That's awesome.
from one of my early Macs. My Max 1 license. So
that's awesome.
I don't know how many floppies this came on, but a lot.
A lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so cool. When Francisco, who's your colleague, we guys worked together at visualization at HMC, he was on the show. We also talked about 3D Studio in DOS. That was my first experience with it as well. And it was incredible. Like you're in DOS, you type in a command, you're running in 3D Studio with a full 3D environment with nothing you had ever seen happen in DOS before that.
I mean, as amazing as it was, so I have this grab this YouTube video of 3D Studio 3. Here's the
Yep.
UI.
Yep,
Like
there it is.
super
Oh
low res
man.
interface, and like everything would draw slowly because computers just didn't have the power for this back then. But
Right.
it was incredible for what it did. Um, you know, this back then, this was amazing, right?
Right.
And it's so funny how much we push millions and millions of polygons around now like it's
Right.
nothing.
You can do way more than that in a web browser nowadays.
Oh
It's
yeah,
incredible.
totally.
Yeah. All right. So thank you very much for going back in time. That was awesome. So what do you want to talk about on the Quarantech show today? I know there's a lot of things we could talk about. Like you said, you have your fingers in lots of different things. But as we've
Yeah.
kind of gone into quarantine, working from home, the kind of data that you deal with, the kind of interactions that you have with people from photography, videography, renderings, all this kind of stuff, it all had to completely change, I assume.
Things definitely did change as we entered work from home, right? And I'd like to talk to you about a few things, right? That we'll start with video, right? So one of the projects that we recently captured was this video at Cal Poly Pomona, right? So the HMC and EYRC did a project. A housing and a new dining facility at Cal Poly Pomona.
Mhm.
And so what we were able to do is go in with a film crew in January and capture an amazing story being told and sort of see how this is going to be transformative to the campus. But that was January, right?
Yeah,
And while that's not that long ago, that was actually right before we wrapped shooting in mid-January, if I recall.
yeah,
And believe it or not, back then within Southern California at least, COVID-19 wasn't something that people were really that worried about.
right.
And so hard to even wrap your head around, right? Based on
Yep,
like how different the world is now,
yeah,
uh, and the impact that we see here locally in Southern California. So things like a video where we've got students interacting, right? Uh, that like now that's at least masks or maybe can't even be done, right? Some of these people aren't social distancing, right? Social distancing wasn't a thing back
wasn't a
then, right?
thing. Yeah, you couldn't do that
Social
shoot.
distancing, yeah. Why would you want to social distance? You want to spend time with the people that you care about. So yeah, I mean, as we look at films moving forward, we're looking at telling stories and adapting, right? So we might not be able in the immediate near future be able to go back out and tell stories in this exact same way, but we're gonna just run with it and adapt and tell stories in more of a method like this, right?
Yeah,
Where
yeah,
where we can talk to people and we can still communicate the stories that need to be told, right? We're doing a lot of great work and we
yeah,
want to get those stories out. So we'll just adapt. Technology wise, it was interesting too. Video has some very unique technology demands. The Cal Poly film was several terabytes, right? So thankfully, we didn't have to move the several terabytes because we were working with Lawrence Anderson Photography on the film itself. So that got to be his problem. But there are films that we do shoot ourselves, right? And so dealing with all that data is a challenge in and of itself. Day one of work from home, I was on the phone with Spectrum, my internet provider, and I managed to get my internet speed doubled at no extra cost. It just took a phone call.
yeah,
Uh, and that's a big deal when you're talking about moving gigs and gigs and gigs or potentially terabytes of data like this.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean some really interesting changes afoot when you look at how can we continue to tell stories like this, right? Engaging stories about how projects are really affecting a community.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about how internet speeds, home storage capacities all play together because if you have a slow internet speed and you're storing everything on the cloud, it's incredibly painful to push things up and
Yeah.
pull things down. but not everybody is adept at doing their own home IT kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
they're not necessarily set up to know what to do with all that data because their laptop can't keep it all on there because we're trying to be portable and work from anywhere and do that kind of stuff. And so how do you handle all that? And not only that, but are these things even available out there, right? Like that, we've seen this time and time again. Oh, we can't get this. We can't get this. We can't get laptops. We can't get cameras. We can't get microphones.
Yeah.
There's so many things like that that we've had to deal with going into this
Yeah.
scenario.
Yeah, definitely. It's unprecedented.
Yeah, for sure. So, what other kinds of interesting technologies and visuals have you guys been working with in the visualization and the creative department at HMC?
We're actually looking at ways that we can try to differentiate ourselves on video calls, right? The
Right,
reality is right now, every company in some ways is the same, right? From a
right,
client's perspective, you're a grid of heads,
right.
right? And every company is a grid of heads, right? At,
Yep,
at some level during like a presentation phase, you're a grid of
right.
heads. So we're looking at ways that we can leverage both just sort of better technology, right? Like the ability to kind of shoot from a camera, switch views, the ability to add in an overlay of who we are, right? I'll switch back to my main view with my lower thirds title, right? Being able to do that and do that live, right, is powerful. Let alone we're also looking at taking some of our augmented reality experience and doing things where we could give people magician hands, right? So they could kind of like pull a hand out, right, and maybe something that they're holding becomes something else, right? Whether that's
That's
3D
awesome.
or 2D. So some really interesting things, right? To continue to try to elevate our ability to share great design, right, and to really communicate that well.
That's awesome.
So another thing that we're really proud of is our work in virtual reality and augmented reality. And Evan, one of the things you just touched on was availability of technology, right?
Yeah,
In this whole work from home scenario.
right.
One of the things that we've seen, we love virtual reality, but VR headsets have sold out
Can't get them.
everywhere,
Yeah,
or are at exorbitant prices, right?
yeah.
And so that creates some challenges. While we're really proud of the work that we've done in custom, even creating custom apps in a game engine. So I
Right.
think Francisco alluded to that a little bit, and maybe that's even a future
Future
episode. But
episode. Yep.
we've done some great work in creating a custom app for clients that then deploys on the App Store, updates automatically roll out to them, and it's this interactive application that gives them all kinds of power that they would want, right? It's not off the shelf. But while we're proud of that, there's this amazing potential in particularly in this COVID world that we live in now, where VR can bring people together, right? And that's the frustrating thing as headsets are out of stock, right?
Right.
And at least with the Rift, I just double checked the stock today, and it's still mid-July that
Wow.
uh, until the Quests are in stock and available in the US. So when we look at that, like I think there's just this unique opportunity in how we use VR where we could actually bring people together, right? Everyone right now is working from home. They're all separate, right? Evan, when I used to work in the office with you physically,
Right.
the idea that you and I could be in VR together was like, that's
Why? Yeah.
nice, right? But we're in the office together,
Right.
right? Like VR is not better than real life.
Right.
But now everyone's working from home, right? And people are working on projects across the firm where we're distributed very well. So VR has this incredible potential to let people shoulder to shoulder do things again, right? There's no social distancing in VR, right? Like we can walk the model and not have to worry about masks and 6 feet apart, right?
And it was only a few
So
years ago, we were both part of this building design and construction magazine article. And one of the quotes that you had in there
yeah,
was you really were looking forward to the day when we could meet in the model. And
yeah.
so that's exactly what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, and it's funny because it then it was a nice to have, right?
Right.
And I mean it's still a nice to have, but I think it sort of leans more towards the need to have, right? Depending on the team, to be able to kind of create those bonds, right?
Yeah.
There's mannerisms transfer really well in VR, right? Even currently with the current iteration of VR and tools, if you're watching someone in VR and they're moving their hands, you actually recognize that person and their head gestures and how they move. It you have that sort of sense of camaraderie, and I'm looking forward to the stock, the headset stock changing
Yeah.
and being able to get more of those and put them in people's hands and really try to foster that growth.
I think it's awesome because it's for us. We've always talked about kind of these two paths that happen simultaneously. There's the one where you're kind of creating something to present to a client, where that could also be in VR, right? Meeting in the model. But there's also the design track and talking
Yeah.
about creating experiences. And
Mhm.
the 2D representation on the screen gets you so far. But
Yeah.
being fully immersed in the space, understanding that what you modeled has this consequence in real space with real light, with color on the wall, with whatever the material is, whatever the size of that volume is, and then experiencing that with other people in there at the same time takes it next level. And that to me is
Yeah.
where the real power of a tool during this process really shows the power that it holds within it that
Yeah.
people can only really understand once they experience it for the first time. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of times where people who've been doing this for a long time are like, oh no, I don't need to do it, you guys do it, if you need that, right? And they don't really understand until they get in there, and then it's like, holy crap, I want to do
Yeah.
this all the time. It's
Yeah.
really powerful to be in that
Yeah.
space even if it's virtual.
Yeah. And certainly we're in a different climate now, right? Because of COVID-19. I don't know that people are really going to be sharing headsets that often, right?
Right.
So that's why, we need to be looking at like finding internally finding ways that we can, get closer to an individual's headset, right?
I just thought about Oprah moment, right? You get a headset, you get a headset, you get a
Yeah.
headset. That's what it's going to have
Yep.
to be.
So one of the things that in this work from home and COVID situation, part of it is just like embracing the reality of what we have. So while I have a lot of hopes about what VR can do, we also need to be realistic that the climate has changed, right? A client is less likely to put a headset on in all likelihood now, right? Because that would require someone being near them. They're sharing some technology from someone else. That's probably in the near term not something that's going to be real popular with clients, right? So one of the things that we're doing is looking at ways that we can bring some of that motion back in, right? So
Yeah.
so we're looking at while we've been doing interactive panoramas for a while, right? We're looking at sort of changing that up and doing a different version of panorama system that uh, acts a lot like Street View, right? Where as you are moving around, and apologies for how slow this is with the screen recording and what's going on. Um, as you're moving around, you definitely have this sense of moving through a space. So while this is not strictly VR in like
Yeah.
a VR headset sort of way, right? It's this just understanding that, look, for the time, we need to roll with this, right? And so one of the things we're rolling with it is looking at changing up and improving a tried and true method, right?
Yeah.
Interactive panoramas. We've been doing this forever, but
Yep.
sort of bumping it up a little bit and
Yep.
actually sort of leveraging that movement through a space, I think will improve that. And so in those instances where clients don't have the ability to put a headset on and that's no longer palatable, that we can leverage this for that.
Yeah, I don't think this can be downplayed. This is huge. This is the next level of the pre-programmed nodes of VR that
Yeah.
you can watch in a browser, because now I can basically take an experience that I'm used to in Google Street View, either on my phone or on my computer, where I can walk down a street before I go there. That's exactly what you're doing. And so people are going to be very excited that they're going to get to understand space better. And I think that's where this
Yeah.
tool with this little tweening capability between
Yep.
the nodes gives that person an a way to experience space rather than just teleporting from one spot to
Yeah.
another. And I think that you do lose a lot in that teleportation process, and this is helping
Oh
bridge
yeah.
the gap so that people can
Yeah.
understand the space.
Yeah, that was always the challenge with panoramas, that we would find that you maybe create not that many for a
Yep.
space, right? And
Right.
so you go from the front door to behind the building, right? And how did you get there, right? And at least this is gonna move you through it, right? And give you a
Yep.
little bit of sense of that, of like, oh, okay, I went from over here to over here.
Yeah.
So
It helps
you know,
understand the
we've
layout better, for sure.
yeah,
That's
I
cool.
mean, we've got to embrace the reality that we're in, right?
Yeah.
And look to reinvent some of the good old fashioned things that have worked really well and just do them a little better now. So we've looked at virtual reality, we looked at some streaming things, and we've talked about some things in video. And what I wanted to end with is augmented reality, because augmented reality, I'm just so excited about the potential of. So I can't share a screenshot right now, so I'm gonna paint you a picture.
Okay.
Uh, One of the things that I'm so excited about that we're working on and that I think is more future episode with Francisco, uh, is augmented reality to add on to the built environment. So we're really excited. We've got this pediatric space that we're working on, and these incredible characters that have been created,
Right.
and we're using augmented reality to bring those characters to life, right? So imagine, you're in a space and you can bring characters on the wall to life. You can have them run around the room with you. You could have them climb onto your shoulder and take a selfie with you. The potential is virtually limitless. And particularly now in this COVID-19 world, I think, well, what are the opportunities where augmented reality can affect, when combined with the built environment, could actually create some opportunities that weren't there before, right? Um, whether that's really pragmatic things like queuing spaces so that it's not necessarily always like a line on the ground,
Right.
or something more just fun and playful like a pediatric space coming to life. So really excited about that. But from a what's something that everyone at the firm can use, I'm really excited about the potential of this sort of remote telepresence technology. We've been working with a company called Clone for some time now, and just sort of providing them feedback on their product, right, as they
Yep.
iterated it. And while it was amazing before, the it required someone on the job site to have an augmented reality headset, and then someone could beam into that. And I was so excited to be talking with them last week and see their latest prototype, because they have it working on an iPad, right? So now, like, where my mind is blown is we there are limits to how many people can be out at a job site now, right? Like,
Right.
there's social distancing issues.
Right.
Some people are more at risk than others.
Yep.
What if augmented reality is that opportunity to beam people in, right? So someone with a simple iPad with a cellular connection, they just start a call and they sweep the iPad across the room, and the person at a remote location teleports into that. They see everything at scale. They see these photos coming in, like real photos, not just 3D. And so you have this console in front of you of this 3D scan of the world, sort of like what you'd get in like a Matterport or something like that.
Yeah.
Uh, and and these photos, so you can click on a photo, you can notate in the remote area, and the person in the field will see that on the screen. It was mind blowing, right?
Yeah.
And I look at that as the tip of the iceberg for how augmented reality has this potential to really change society in a positive way.
Yeah. And so just to be clear, what you're saying is a person at a job site has an iPad and using the camera system that's in there that has some depth sensing abilities, go around and actually sweep the room, and it captures three-dimensional data with the photographic images like mapped onto that as textures, so that somebody else who's watching can go around and explore the room on their own, and they're not just seeing what the other person is pointing the camera at. The camera is a capture device so that I, in another location, can experience the space on my device. And that is
Correct.
mind-blowing, incredible stuff. And like you
Yeah.
said, it's on an iPad. Like lots of people have iPads. They don't need a special Microsoft HoloLens to do that anymore.
Yeah, and that's the incredible thing, right? Because if you're on a job site, you need something that's bulletproof, right?
Yeah,
And an iPad is the closest piece of technology I can think to that, right? Like the iPad's powerful, not to be a commercial for Apple, right? But there's nothing like the
yeah,
iPad that is as fast as it is and as consistently reliable as it is.
right.
So to have something like that where you can just sort of create a 3D model in seconds with no delay, and that go to someone else, I think presents incredible opportunities in this new era that we live in,
Yeah.
right?
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's
And it's
it's
incredible
exciting
to kind
stuff.
of, again, you can't understate what's going on behind the scenes there. You are simply seeing the results of that, but in order to capture the geometry, texture it, compress it down, send it over the internet, put it into the cloud, into another space that somebody else can beam into and experience all that. Like you don't notice that any of that's happening, but that is only enabled by the technological state that we're in currently. I mean that, and they're right on the bleeding edge of that. That's
Well,
awesome.
and Apple and Google have done a great job about creating these toolkits and letting other, augmented reality toolkits that other companies can leverage.
Yeah.
And I think we're starting to see some real exciting movement in the AR space. There, the rumors are that Apple's got a AR headset that they're going to be releasing at some point, right?
Yeah.
I keep seeing rumors of a price tag, so
Getting
not
close
that
if there's a
Apple's the
price
be
tag
all end
coming.
all, but once Apple enters a space, I think it demonstrates that space has a certain level of maturity, right? That Apple created a product that is
Right.
really consistent and reliable. So I'm excited to see what they continue to bring to AR.
Well, Chris, you've shown us some incredible stuff today. It's super exciting to see what's going on visually across all these different mediums. I expected no less from you. I wanted to do the final segment of the show and have you tell everybody what you are most excited about in technology.
Most most excited about. So I think it's the AR VR space, but just kind of particularly AR. I I, I'm so excited. I go to these trade shows, right, and you see that at least in VR, you can there's sensory all kinds of sensory options that are available now, right? So you can add smell, you can add wind, you can add motion, right? And
Right.
when I imagine like how that can help as these things start to come together and converge, right? How that could help someone who's stuck at home because they're high risk and they feel like they can't go out to experience a far off place and its unique smells and it's the feeling of being there is just I just think it's so exciting, right?
Yeah.
We're not at the holodeck yet, but that's something that I grew up with, right? As a
Right.
as a nerdy kid, right? The Star Trek holodeck. We're not there yet, but I'm just so excited to see how this is sort of moving us in that direction.
I love it because it comes back to experience, right? It's a great equalizer in some respects where I think we've definitely experienced it, and I know not everybody has, but you go into VR or you go into an AR experience, like we did the Void experience in Vegas
Yeah.
last time we were there, and it's incredible because there's heat and there's wind and there's
Oh yeah.
movement, and you're not tethered to anything, and you take
Yep.
the headset off, and you're like, oh, I'm here. You get so immersed in it. I think that's so
Yeah.
incredible to really affect people's experience that really has an effect on them. And I think that's what architecture is like it is immersive by nature. And so if we
Yeah.
can continue to basically deliver that to people, even during times like these, that's an incredible thing to be able to do to affect people on a very emotional level. And that's what I love about all this, the visual stuff and how it ties back into architecture, is that we really can affect people on a very emotional level, even if they
Yeah.
can't be there. But obviously that's our goal in the end, is to to take them there and to let them experience it for themselves. So I love the work that you guys are doing. Incredible work. So thanks very much for joining us today on the show.
Thank you. It's been great.
See you next time.
Bye. Did I ever show you my OG portfolio stuff? Look at that amazing text with drop shadow or outer glow. Man, like I remember it's like this is like good stuff from my like aerospace days, but like I remember starting out making like shocks, and I think this water and grass like blows my mind the most. Both because this is the full resolution of these images, which is like 640 by 480, and it's just so bad, right? But I remember thinking this was amazing. I can't even believe I still have this.